Hello, everyone. Welcome wherever you are in this awful, unique, but awful lockdown situation that we all find ourselves in. This is a time of our lives that we've never had to deal with before. And so we're trying to make the best of it. And one of the best ways that we at Western Marble Arts Synagogue are trying to make people feel connected is to speak to some illustrious personalities who have illuminated our lives. And in literal sense, our guest today, Gemma Levine, has literally illuminated our lives. And I want to welcome Gemma Levine, a member of our synagogue for so many years, a wonderful, proud Jewish woman, but has done so much and is known all over the world. So just a few words of bio from me about Gemma, who is with us today. Welcome, Gemma, from your lockdown and isolation. It looks beautiful, the green of the hedge behind you. I've just got a plain white wall in Jerusalem, but at least I am in Jerusalem, so that when I will be allowed out by the police in 2 weeks' time, because I'm in isolation by their order, that I will be able to enjoy Jerusalem as you have, Gemma, on so many occasions.
Yes.
But what I want to say about Gemma Levine, an internationally published photographer and author, 20 books, 60 exhibitions, maybe there's more by now, around the world. A celebration of 25 years of work was put on at the National Portrait Gallery some 20 years ago. Famous personalities, no more famous than Princess Diana and Moshe Dayan. A memoir, just one more, published. So many things she can talk about. Her battles with illness and her publications following her battles with illness. Her synagogue, her faith, her Israel. All of this is part of what makes up Gemma Levine. What an honor it has for us to have you with us, Gemma. And please tell us what you've been doing and how things are.
Well, first of all, Lionel, may I thank you for including me, because for me, this is a tremendous honor and something unique that I'm doing, sitting in Oxford, in my garden. Sun is shining, sky is blue. My hair's grown so long that I don't know what to do with it, but we all have those problems at the moment. But yes, I am actually proud of what I've achieved in, it's exactly, just over actually, half a century. It started, well, at the very, very beginning, I was married. I got married in 1961 and had two incredible sons who are now incredible young men, James and Adam, and brought them up in London. And we took her off because my husband was posted in Paris at the time. So I had a year outside England with the boys. And during that time, actually I'll go back a wee bit. Before I was married, when I was 17, I was part of a choir called the Zemel Choir, headed by Dudley Cohen. And we all went off to Israel to sing in an international song festival. And that was when I was 17, which enabled me to see so much of the country, because we were taken from north to south, east to west. We went to sing in army camps. We sang in the desert. We sang up in Elat in the Galilee amongst the flowers. I mean, we went everywhere. And that gave me my taste, my first taste for Israel. Subsequently, when we married, we bought a property in Jerusalem. So I envy you right now. You're sitting, even though locked down, you're sitting in Jerusalem, and I can visualize it 100%, and I'm envious. But my career started really with Henry Moore in 1975. I met Henry Moore because I wrote him a letter of admiration because I'd seen quite a lot of his work, and wrote and said, do you think I could come down and see you one day? And it was a long letter, not just, please may I come and see you, but quite a lengthy letter. And in response, I had a phone call which said, Gemma Levine. Throughout the whole time I knew him, he thought my first name was Gemma Levine. So he said, Gemma Levine, would you come and see me? March the 23rd, I think, yes, 1975. And of course, you can look around my studios and my gardens. And of course I did. And the outcome was, he actually showed me a bark of elm. It was 8-10 foot long, lying on the ground, on the grass. To me, it was an ordinary tree trunk. And he pointed out that in 2 years' time, that would be a reclining figure, which would mark his 80th birthday. So I was fascinated, and I said, I can't imagine how a bark of a tree can be transformed into one of these incredible reclining figures that you're so famous for. So he said, well, he said, you know, it takes a long time, about 2 years. So I said, well, do you think I could document that with photographs? I didn't say to him then I wasn't a photographer. I had an Instamatic at that time. So he said, yes, he said, that's a simple idea. I like simplicity. All right. So that night we had a dinner party at home, and I sat next to Charles Forte and said to him, he actually asked me what I'd done during the day, not thinking I'd come up with anything other than go to Marks and Spencer's. But anyway, I told him about the Henry Moore, and he said to me, you want a publisher? I said, yes. He said, well, I have a publishing company. That was the beginning. Off I went. So really from there.
The same day, Henry Moore and Charles Forte, the same day.
Yes, yes.
Ha! What stroke of luck.
That was really the start of my career, and that was, I guess, 1974. I then decided I better pick myself up and get myself a proper camera. I couldn't do any of this with an Instamatic. So I got a Hasselblad and I got a Leica. I'm not technical, so I can't go into great explanations about why they were so fantastic. But the end result was that, to me, photographing with cameras like that, it really was perfection as far as I could get. As far as I could get, I repeat that. And I chose black and white because that's how I've actually photographed through my life, because I then went on to portraiture. And with the teaching of Henry Moore behind me, he really was my mentor. And he said, don't use flashlight because that flattens any shadow on a face, and you'll never get the expression you want if you use flashlight. So bearing that in mind, I set up a studio where I lived after divorcing. I lived in Wimpole Street in Marylebone, and I started photographing famous people of the 80s and the 90s. I'll go back a wee bit, if I may, Lionel, and say...
Ask you one question. What did Henry Moore think? What did Henry Moore think about your final photo of the reclining figure?
Oh, he was thrilled. I worked with him for 12 years until he died. I went and sat with him for a few weeks during the time that he couldn't move. He was in bed. And I showed him the photographs from the books. And I'd been there 12 years. And for the first time in his life, he called me Gemma.
So you were very close. I had no idea that you were so close. That was wonderful.
Yes, very, very close. And we had such a professional working relationship that when he was ill, it was the first time I had to sit down and talk to him about my sons and my life. We never talked personally, ever, not once in 12 years. He was.
Did he know you were Jewish? Did that matter? Or it didn't matter, but the Jewish thing never mattered.
He knew, because at certain times I couldn't see him. You know, either it was Yom Tovim or I would never go on a weekend. It just worked out like that. He knew I was, and he respected that enormously.
So go back. You were saying you were going back now.
I'm going back. I'm going forwards. I think I'm going forwards. Oh, yes. How did I become famous faces? That's what I was going to tell you. After divorcing, I was very, very down. And Lady Falkender, I had met and had become a good friend. She introduced me to Harold Wilson, and Harold Wilson was the first prime minister that I'd photographed. I went to his resignation party, and I dropped my cameras over his feet. And Eric Morecambe was behind me, and he said to the prime minister, "It wasn't my fault, I didn't trip her up." So that it was a memory. But Marcia Falkender said to me, "You've got to get yourself together, you've got to move on. Let me organize for charity. All my books are for charity. Let me organize for it was leukemia, a book called Faces of the 80s. She said, I will gather all the famous faces of the 80s. I will get you a secretary. All you have to do is see people, attend to the diary, photograph them, and that's all you have to do. You don't have to worry about the text or anything else." Brilliant. So she at the time she asked Jeffrey Archer to write the caption text. And I started photographing people like Judi Dench and John Gielgud and so many people from Parliament, Michael Portillo. Gosh.
What coloured trousers was he wearing?
Pardon?
What colour trousers was Michael Portillo wearing? You know, he wears the most bearish.
Not lilac, not pink. He was very, very conservative. Anyway, right. I had a wonderful few years, and I photographed everybody. I think the book had 150 portraits. 20 minutes was my maximum. And the reason I was so quick was because I found out very early on in my life that if you had somebody that you were focusing on longer than 10 minutes, boredom would show on the face. So
like my sermons, just like my sermons. You're quite right.
Anyway,
yes.
That was Faces of the 80s. Then I went on to Faces of the 90s, again for charity, but that was very special because I had Princess Diana writing the foreword, and I did it with her, and she was amazing. She came to we sat on the floor and we went through the photographs and we gossiped, really gossiped. It was terrible, but wonderful.
Wonderful. So all these people you saw, and it was all for charity. You just mentioned these books were for charity, all of them.
Yes. Oh, with one exception, I did Faces of British Theatre. That all the parties and everything I did, sold the photographs, that all went to charity. So yes, I don't feel guilty. Yes, that one did as well.
Now, did you always go to them, or did they come to you when you photographed all these?
Mostly to me, because I set up a studio in Wimpole Street. I did have lights, even though Henry Moore said I shouldn't, but I learned to use them so that it wouldn't floodlight the face. So that was good. But during that time, I went to Israel to do my books in Israel. And I had an extraordinary experience in 1976 when I went down to Sinai. And I was supposed to photograph Wadi Farran, a wadi down there, with one of the generals, and he didn't show up when I arrived at the airport. And I was taken by an Australian to a medical hut right in the middle of Sinai, near where Wadi Farran was. And he said, General Peru will be with you by 5. I was waiting from 3 to 5 to 10 at night to midnight to 5 o'clock the next morning. He didn't arrive till 8 o'clock the following morning. Meanwhile, those 24 hours for me was like the Day of Atonement. I prayed, I went through my life, I constructed all sorts of imaginary things that I hadn't done. It was just the most extraordinary experience, which actually, Lionel, makes me think a little bit now of how we are locked in now. I mean, gosh, I've been so lucky. I'm in the country. I've been doing 2 books. I've been, working every day on editing and photographing. So I just think back now to those 24 hours I had in Sinai.
Well, some generals can win wars, but they can't keep time.
Yes, yes.
But it was good that he didn't arrive. It was great. It was good for you, for your psyche and for yourself.
Yes. Yes, because I'm a great believer out of bad becomes good in some way.
Right.
Positives out of negatives. And that's how I came through cancer writing a book. And that was a positive for me from a negative. I have lymphedema in one arm, I'm semi-disabled. And I thought I'd never photograph again. And here I am, not well, and only with my iPad and iPhone, I'm photographing for this new book or new books that I'm working now to raise awareness for lymphedema because so few people know what it is. But it's my life because I'm semi-disabled in one arm.
Well, when you wrote Just One More, the photographer's memoir, was that after your battles with breast cancer? I think it was back in 2010, was it?
You're right. Gosh, you're very precise. Yes, I did have cancer 2010. And Just One More, my memoir came out just after that. I wrote about it in my afterword or my forward, I can't remember. But after that, I wrote my cancer book, which is called Go With The Flow. And thanks to Rabbi Sachs, Jonathan Sachs, he gave me that title. And of course, yes, he's written that book a bit for me. So
I know, very dear to you, and you're very dear to him. I know that.
Well, that's very nice to hear. So I think we're more or less up to present day.
Yes, but so let's talk a little about lymphedema, because we want to publicize the fact that not everything goes away after chemo, does it?
Well, lymphedema had nothing to do with chemotherapy.
But wasn't it as a result of
what lymphedema is? I don't know, can you see my arm?
A little more this way. Yes, yes.
Okay, my arm has swollen. And the reason it's swollen is because the fluid doesn't run down the tissues of my arm. It's blocked. And that's what lymphedema is. Who knows where it comes from? Children are born with lymphedema.
Really?
People, yes, you see, what I'm trying to help to do is to raise awareness for lymphedema, because so few people know anything about it, including the national health doctors. So the professor that I'm working with, Professor Peter Mortimer, he's my co-author for my book, which is called Let's Talk Lymphedema. He goes through several countries and explains how lymphedema is people who are affected by lymphedema in different ways.
Really? So there's a lot there, you see, and you're so multifaceted. Can we go back, Gemma, to some of the personalities and some of the things you did? What is this story about you crawling under press photography to get to Moshe Dayan or to Golda Meir?
Yeah, I was, I don't know, I was one of the only women or girls at that time, young women, that arrived at the Royal Albert Hall. You know how big that is. Golda Meir was speaking. It was 1975. She was talking, and the hall, Albert Hall, was packed. Everything was absolutely packed.
Yes.
And the rows and rows of journalists from all over the world were standing on the stage where she was uplifted on a further stage, and I couldn't get near. So I decided, well, I've just got to take a photograph. So they were tall men, and they all stand with their legs wide apart because they're holding very heavy equipment. So I found myself crawling to the front, and I got a photograph, and it went into the papers. So I'm very proud. My first photograph payment was £35, which I thought was amazing.
And what about the books? You had a successful session with Moshe Dayan as well. He sat for you, didn't he? How did he have the patience to sit for you?
No, he didn't. He didn't sit with me.
Oh,
I met him at the King David Hotel, Jerusalem. He was going through the doors that swivel, you know, the roundabout.
Yeah.
I was going the other way, and we clashed.
Yeah.
And I'd already had an appointment with George Weidenfeld, the publisher in London. And he said to me, I'd like you to do a book in Israel. We need a fresh eye. And will you do it? And I said, yes, of course. And had not quite a commission at that time, but it was in my mind. So we ended up clashing. And I said, Moshe Dayan, General Dayan. Yes, he said. And who are you? So I said, I'm Gemma Levine from London. Yes. I said, I'd like very much to take a photograph of you, if I may. So he said, there are 1,000 or more photographs of me on hand at this moment from any of these journalists that you can get one from. So I said, no. It's got to be mine, because I think I'm going to do a book in London on Israel, and I really would like you in it. So he said, he thought, and he said, all right, 10 o'clock, Monday morning, Knesset. And that was that. And I got to meet him, and he invited me to his home. And I went there for a couple of days, where I photographed him and his wife, Rachel, at the time, and had the most wonderful couple of days. And we together did a book for George Weidenfeld called Living with the Bible.
You know, I would subtitle your name, Gemma Levine, Mistress of Feminine Chutzpah.
I was told I had chutzpah, yes.
Oh, you certainly got it. I mean,
I've never heard feminine chutzpah.
Not feminine?
I've never heard.
Womanly, feminine. You get away with it so beautifully. That's the thing. I mean, Elaine Payne, Ben Kingsley, David Frost. What did he comment about you? A good photographer must like people and be liked by the people she photographs.
Well,
and it's obvious. That's what happens with.
Well, he said that. But he put me on his, it was so funny because he asked me to go on his program. It was Sunday at Frost on Sunday. And I was so nervous. I've never been on television before. So I went on his program, and I was sitting all huddled up and tried to listen to him and tried to answer his questions, and got through it somehow. And I wasn't very happy. In fact, I was dreadfully unhappy, and thought, right, that's it, forget about it. You won't go on television again. The following week, his program had been cut off, so they repeated the program from the week before, which was me. So, David
All right,
Frost.
we could talk for hours. Just a couple of questions I want to know. A young Tony Blair. We hear, I'm sure that you photographed him as Prime Minister. Did you?
Both.
Tony
I
Blair?
did. I photographed him long before he was Prime Minister. When I went into St. Stephen's something. I don't know what it's called. Opposite the House of Commons, St. Stephen's something. He had a little office there, but he had a balcony. And I said to him, I really like natural light. Would you mind going onto the balcony? And he said, pardon me, he said, yes. And he went on the balcony and he stood up, and behind him was Big Ben. And he stood like that with his hands like that. And I took that photograph, and that photograph is at the National Portrait Gallery.
That's an iconic photograph. And I'd never realized that you had taken it. I mean, that is and here is a future Prime Minister that you got beforehand. Tremendous.
In Downing Street, and he was delightful. It was absolutely charming. So I had a very good relationship with him.
Well, I mean, I would ask you lots of questions about your relationship with Princess Diana, but I think people should read the book, and then they can really hear all about that. Where's the book? Show us the book. There it is. Just one more. Oh, that's just one of many. Is that the one you gave me? I can't. It was so kind.
Hi, Elliot.
Have you lost your sound?
Am I still on?
You're on. So look, we've had a lot. There's so much more I could ask you, but I want to go back in a sense to conclude. First of all, is there anything else you would like to tell me that I haven't asked you?
Well, the war situation was the only time I've been a photojournalist. Would you like to hear a little of that? That was in 1982 when war broke out with Lebanon and Israel, you might remember.
I was in Lebanon for 3 months, so I remember very well the idea. Won't forget that.
I was listening to news, looking at newspapers, and found there was such a lot of anti-Israel comments on the media. So I went to the embassy and I said to them, would they like a photojournalist to go over and take some photographs that would put Israel in a good light that we could publicize over here, maybe on the radio and so on. And they thought, why not? So they sent me over there in 1982, and I went to I went to the Lebanese border, properly escorted by the Israelis, and they took me in their vans and so on. And all I did was take my camera and a tiny recorder, but very small. And I started walking around, walking down, and then we went on the front line in Beirut. And I had taken many photographs prior to that in hospitals of all the children that had got burnt and so on, and masses of photographs. That was day one. And then went to the front line, stood by an American journalist in front of barbed wire. And I was chatting to him when suddenly sirens, so much noise, and a bullet came, boom, hit him in the leg, and he dropped to the ground next to me. So there was a rush of ambulances, and there was so much going on. There was no way I could photograph. There was so much going on, and I was petrified. Anyway, they got this fellow to hospital. I mean, he was all right. He had a bullet in his leg, but they removed it. He was all right. At that moment, I thought, that's enough. And I went straight back to Israel, straight back to London, where I had my family sitting there waiting for me to make brownies. on the tea table. And I thought, can't do that again. That was the end of my life as a photojournalist.
Well, phenomenal. And thank God you got back all right from that. So it's been a very, very colorful life. I mean, we haven't mentioned riding around, with Frank Sinatra.
Oh, that was before I was a photographer.
One story. Frank Sinatra, what was that about?
It was when I was married to Eric. We were in New York. Eric had a business friend and a great friend of ours socially called Abba Schwartz, who was a great friend of Sinatra. And Abba Schwartz loved to do wonderful things to cheer people up and give them experiences. So he arranged privately with Frank Sinatra to come by the hotel in a buggy one night. And Abba called Eric and I into the buggy. And, you know, I got such a surprise. And off we went. And Frank Sinatra sang while we went round New York. It was a half-hour trip, but it was so incredible. And as soon as we stopped anywhere, there were floods of people coming up asking him for autographs. It was a moment.
You know, you could name drop for 5 hours and still not go through all the people you've met. Some people love to name drop. You don't. You do it because it was your profession and you met all these people. How fortunate you've been, Gemma, to have done all. And also, I would say your connection with music, the fact that you went to Israel with the Zemel Choir, it's still going. My sister sang with the Zemel Choir. I have a great friend, Robert Brody, who is one of their great soloists in the Zemel Choir. It's an amazing institution. And look what it did for your Zionism, and I'm sure for so many others. So all these things have contributed to make you the person you are. There's no question about it. And I would say, I know you love your synagogue, the music of the synagogue, and your faith. There's a rabbi in the Ethics of the Fathers. We read about him in the summer months, and he says, someone in whom people delight, in that person, the Lord will delight. And I think I would say that about you, Gemma Levine. There's something about you that everybody delights in, the way you are to people, the easy way you have, and the fact that you have drawn so many people towards you, and you have not asked for anything from it for yourself. And because of that, the Lord delights in you. And I think, Gemma Levine, we are privileged to have you as a member, as a friend, and as someone who has represented the Jewish community so beautifully. And I want to thank you for your time today. And may you be well to continue. Complete those books, and we will see you, if not this Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. I know you love the music of the synagogue. We will see you soon, and I will see you personally soon. Thank you for your time today. It's been such a...
I mean, it's been wonderful talking with you, as always, love. Thank you.
God bless you, Gemma. And on behalf of all of those who will be watching this and seeing this, I want to thank you, all the members of the synagogue, and all those who will see you on Facebook as a result. Have a good day, keep safe and well, and many thanks for your time.
And shalom, shalom.
Shalom, shalom.